Her name was Mariah Ellis, just 19 years old, a waitress in a dusty little diner off Highway 77 in rural Texas, where the coffee stayed burnt and the stares lasted too long. She had soft brown eyes that always looked like they were halfway between hope and giving up. Her apron barely fit around her belly now, not that anyone dared ask. Most of the regulars already knew, and the rest whispered behind coffee mugs and phone screens. Mariah found out she was pregnant at 8 weeks. The father was long gone, just a one-night mistake with a man twice her age who promised her a ride to Austin and ended up giving her a baby instead. She cried for 3 days when she saw that second pink line. She'd always told herself she'd be smarter. She wasn't like her mother. At least that's what she used to believe. She wanted to get an abortion. She even scraped up $300 from tips and her rainy day cash. But Texas had just passed Senate Bill 8. 6 weeks was the cutoff. She didn't even know she was pregnant by then. And now, no clinic in the state would touch her. "I'm sorry, but we can't help you," the woman on the other end of the line said, not unkindly. "You'll have to go out of state, maybe New Mexico, but we legally can't advise you on travel." Out of state? With what car? With what money? Mariah lived in a rundown trailer with her mother, a woman who worked nights at a packing plant and spent mornings chain-smoking in front of daytime court shows. "Ain't no one coming to save us, baby," her mother once said. "Just gotta ride your pain till it stops hurting." But this wasn't a ride. It was a sentence. At 22 weeks, Mariah started bleeding. A lot. It soaked through her jeans, onto the diner stool, and dripped down the chrome leg like thick red syrup. Her coworker, Nessa, screamed. Someone called 911. Mariah passed out before the ambulance even arrived. She woke up in the ER. Her legs were in stirrups, her mother standing in the corner like she wanted to light a cigarette, but knew she couldn't. A doctor came in, young, pale, with a tight jaw and tired eyes. "We believe you're experiencing a miscarriage," he said, "but there's still cardiac activity." Mariah blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means we can't intervene yet," he said, eyes darting toward the hallway. "State law prohibits us from performing an abortion unless there's no heartbeat. We have to wait." "Wait for what?" her mother snapped. "She's bleeding to death." The doctor didn't answer. He just left the room. Mariah didn't sleep that night. She lay in that hospital bed, soaked in pain, fever creeping into her limbs, knowing her baby wasn't going to make it, and neither might she. But no one did anything. By morning, the fever turned into sepsis. Her body shook uncontrollably, and her skin turned gray. A nurse rushed in. Someone finally declared it a medical emergency. Too late. When they prepped her for surgery, her blood pressure had already crashed. Mariah Ellis was pronounced dead at 8:13 a.m., surrounded by beeping machines and silent nurses. The fetus was still technically viable when she died. The official report would say, "complications from septic miscarriage," but those who knew what really happened would call it something else. Murder by law. The hospital called it a tragedy. That's the word they used in their short, sterile statement to the press. "We are deeply saddened by the tragic passing of a young patient. Our thoughts are with her family during this difficult time." But for Angela Ellis, Mariah's mother, tragedy wasn't the word. Tragedy was a flood. Tragedy was cancer. What happened to her daughter was neglect wrapped in legal fear, and she wasn't going to let anyone sugarcoat it. The hospital handed her a pamphlet, Grief Counseling. She handed it right back. Angela sat in that trailer 2 days after the funeral, staring at Mariah's baby clothes folded neatly in a basket by the door. The tiny onesies, yellow and soft, had still smelled like the store. She had picked them up when Mariah started showing,
before they both accepted what was coming. "She was trying. She was going to be better than me," Angela whispered to no one. She didn't cry that day. She just picked up the phone and started calling every news station she could think of. Most didn't answer. Some hung up. But a small, independent journalist named Keisha Dunn finally listened. She showed up the next morning with a notebook, a recorder, and quiet eyes. Angela told her everything: the bleeding, the ER, the doctor who said, "We have to wait," the fever, the death. Keisha sat silent for a long time. Then she asked the question no one else had. "Do you want to go public?" Angela blinked. "You think anyone gives a damn?" Keisha didn't answer. She just hit record. Within a week, the story hit local media. Young Texas woman dies after hospital delays care due to abortion law. Then it caught fire. The hashtags started. Hashtag Justice for Mariah. Hashtag Abortion Rights Now. Hashtag SB 8 Kills. Angela was invited on podcasts, local radio, even CNN for a 90-second clip. But with every headline came backlash. Anonymous messages flooded her Facebook. Maybe if you raised her better. She should have kept her legs closed. She wasn't a victim, she was irresponsible. People she had known for years stopped talking to her in the grocery store. Someone slashed her car tires outside the dollar store. At church, the pastor refused to say Mariah's name at the prayer circle.
"You're making this political," he told Angela. "No," she shot back. "The law made it political. The law killed my baby." Even the hospital tried to silence her. They sent her a legal notice. Not quite a lawsuit, but a warning. A reminder that what happened to Mariah was within state medical guidelines. Angela pinned that letter to her fridge like a war flag. Keisha's article eventually caught the attention of a civil rights attorney, Manuel Ortiz, who agreed to represent Angela pro bono. He was fiery, fearless, and determined to turn this story into a lawsuit, a challenge not just against the hospital, but against the law itself. But even he warned her, "You're walking into fire, Angela. They're going to dig into Mariah's life, her choices, her past. They'll twist it all." Angela didn't flinch. "Let them," she said. "My daughter didn't die because she was reckless. She died because the state told doctors to wait while she bled." Meanwhile, at the hospital, the young doctor who saw Mariah that night, Dr. Evan Whitaker, couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her eyes, wide and terrified, asking him, wait for what? He had followed protocol. He had done what the law demanded. But law and humanity weren't the same. 3 weeks later, he quit his job. He didn't tell anyone, just packed his things and walked out of that sterile building one last time. Dr. Evan Whitaker moved into a motel on the edge of Austin, the kind of place with flickering neon lights and buzzing ice machines. He paid in cash and left no forwarding address. For days, he didn't answer calls from colleagues or his parents. His white coat sat crumpled in the back of his car, like a reminder of who he used to be. Every night, he poured himself a glass of cheap whiskey, stared at the ceiling, and replayed it all. Mariah's pale face, her slow breaths, the moment she asked him, "Am I gonna die?" and the shameful silence he had offered in return. The hospital never asked him to stay. They didn't fight for him. They sent him a letter instead, thanking him for his service during a challenging political climate. Cold and clean, just like Mariah's body, when he saw her in the morgue for the first and last time. Meanwhile, Angela's lawsuit had caught fire. Cable news hosts debated her face like she was a symbol instead of a grieving mother. Some said she was brave. Others said she was exploiting her daughter's death for attention. Politicians lined up on both sides, using Mariah's name in speeches without knowing a damn thing about her. Angela watched it all from her trailer with her jaw clenched.
No one talked about how Mariah used to sing in the shower, or how she wanted to be a veterinary nurse, or how she once cried over a stray dog she couldn't afford to save. All they saw was her uterus, her choices, and now, her corpse. The lawsuit targeted SB 8 directly, arguing that the law's chilling effect on doctors created conditions for medical negligence. But the state's lawyers were brutal. In court filings, they questioned why Mariah waited so long to seek care. They brought up texts she sent to a friend about maybe going to Mexico. They even subpoenaed her high school records, as if bad grades justified death. Angela was there for every hearing. She didn't wear black like they expected. She wore Mariah's favorite hoodie, faded purple with a tear at the shoulder. She wanted them to remember the girl they killed wasn't a statistic. She was someone's baby, someone's whole world. Then all of a sudden, a video leaked. It was body cam footage from one of the EMTs who responded to the diner that day. You could hear Mariah moaning in the background, her voice thin and full of pain. EMT: "She's bleeding bad. You sure we're taking her to," redacted, "hospital." Second EMT: "Closest one with an ER." EMT: "Yeah, but they got that no intervention rule now. Just saying. I don't want to watch another one die." The video spread like wildfire. Public outrage exploded. Protests started forming outside the hospital. Doctors and nurses began anonymously speaking out. One nurse admitted they had a list of patients they weren't allowed to treat until certain conditions were met, all because of SB 8. Even Dr. Whitaker saw the video. He threw up in the motel bathroom and stared at himself in the mirror for an hour. Then he picked up his phone, called Keisha Dunn, and said just 3 words: "I want in." Dr. Evan Whitaker sat across from Keisha Dunn in a quiet cafe outside Austin, hands trembling as he stirred his coffee. He had aged 10 years in 3 weeks, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. Keisha, notebook in hand, didn't press. She waited. "People think we're monsters," he said. "They don't get that we're afraid too." Keisha nodded slightly. "Afraid of what?" "Losing our licenses, getting sued, even jailed. SB 8 made it possible for anyone to sue us if they think we enabled an abortion. So we freeze, we delay, we wait, while girls like Mariah die." He took a breath. "I knew she wasn't going to make it, but the hospital's legal team told us if we touched her before the fetus lost a heartbeat, we'd be liable. I was supposed to be a doctor, not a politician." Keisha leaned forward. "Would you testify?" He paused. Then slowly, he nodded. The story broke like a dam bursting. Texas doctor breaks silence. Hospital protocols delay life-saving care under SB 8. Headlines rolled out across the country. News trucks descended on the parking lot. Protesters stood shoulder to shoulder with candles and homemade signs. Mariah should be here. Doctors shouldn't need lawyers to save lives. SB 8 equals death.
The Texas Health Department released a cold, defensive statement denying systemic failure. But pressure mounted. More whistleblowers began contacting Keisha, nurses, ER physicians, paramedics, each with horror stories they had buried deep in their conscience. Angela watched the chaos unfold, but none of it brought Mariah back. She sat at her kitchen table, a stack of legal papers on one side, photos of her daughter on the other. The house felt like it was holding its breath. One afternoon, she received a letter. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, handwritten. Just one sentence. "Your daughter saved my life. I went out of state because of her story." Angela stared at it, hands trembling. Then she folded the paper and placed it inside Mariah's baby book. But the war wasn't over. 3 days before the court hearing, Angela's trailer was set on fire. She wasn't home, thank God, but everything inside was lost. Mariah's clothes, her journals, the ultrasound photos, gone. Fire investigators called it suspicious, Angela called it a message. "Back off," Keisha said when she heard. "They're trying to scare you." Angela didn't blink. "Let them be scared, I'm still breathing." She moved into a motel on the edge of town, ironically, 2 doors down from Dr. Whitaker. They didn't talk at first, just exchanged tired glances, like 2 survivors of the same storm. In the days that followed, Texas state officials filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, arguing Angela had no legal standing and that the law couldn't be blamed for individual medical outcomes. It was a calculated move, dull, bureaucratic, and heartless. But the judge refused to toss it. He set a court date. National media prepared for a circus. Angela walked into the courthouse in jeans and boots, holding a framed photo of Mariah as a little girl in pigtails. Dr. Whitaker followed behind, face pale but determined. Inside, the courtroom was packed. One side held suits and state attorneys with folders full of laws. The other side, human faces, women, nurses, students, mothers. Mariah's face wasn't there, but her story hung in the air like a ghost. Angela took the stand. She told them everything, and when the opposing attorney tried to rattle her, to paint her daughter as reckless and irresponsible, Angela didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just stared him down and said, "She died because your law told doctors to wait, and you waited too long." The courtroom went silent. The jury looked shaken, but the verdict wouldn't come for weeks. Long before the courtroom, the protests, or the headlines, Mariah Ellis had already been fighting a quiet war of her own, a war that no one really saw until it was too late. She was 12 when her dad left. No note, no goodbye, just a pair of boots by the door and an empty whiskey bottle on the counter. Her mother, Angela, barely spoke for days. The silence in the trailer stretched like a rubber band pulled too tight. It never quite snapped, but it never relaxed either. Mariah learned early how to dodge the kind of hurt that hides in plain sight. She got good at being invisible at school, sliding between lockers, avoiding eye contact with the teachers who always seemed just a little too overwhelmed to notice the bruises behind her smile. By 16, she'd mastered survival. Not living, surviving. She worked 2 part-time jobs after class, one at a gas station, the other cleaning motel rooms where truckers left more than tips. At night, she studied alone. She wanted to be a vet tech, dreamed of working with animals, creatures that didn't lie or leave or throw punches when they drank. She applied to a junior college in Austin and got in. But then the bills started piling up. Angela lost her job after the packing plant downsized. The electricity got cut off, then the water. Mariah's acceptance letter sat pinned on the fridge with a cracked magnet, while reality strangled it like a vine. That's when she met Eddie. He was 32, she was 18. She never called it what it was, grooming. She just said he was nice and helped her out. He'd drive her home from shifts, bring her dinner, talk sweet, until one night he didn't ask before sliding into her bed. She didn't say no, but she didn't say yes either. And in Texas, no one ever asked her side. 2 months later, she missed her period, then another. And when she finally took the test, it glowed with 2 pink lines like a warning flare. She called Eddie. He ghosted her. She stared at that stick for hours, wishing she could peel the pink off like paint and just make it all go away. Mariah tried everything. Home remedies, hot baths, prayers whispered into pillows. Nothing worked. And when she finally scraped together the money for a clinic, it was too late. 6 weeks had passed. Angela didn't even know until the belly began to show. And by then, Mariah had decided not to burden her with more bad news. "I'll just figure it out," she said.
I'll just have it, and then give it up, or something. But her voice trembled when she said it. There were moments, rare, quiet ones, when she pressed her hand against her stomach in the mirror and whispered apologies. I didn't ask for this. I'm sorry you're here. I don't hate you. I can't do this. Mariah was smart, smarter than people gave her credit for. But the system wasn't built for smart. It was built for compliance, for control, for punishment disguised as protection. And that's what the court would never fully grasp. She didn't die just because of a law. She died because a lifetime of silence, poverty, and invisibility trained her not to ask for help until it was too late. Outside the courthouse, a mural of Mariah was being painted on a brick wall across from City Hall. A girl with soft brown eyes, surrounded by flowers and clouds. Underneath her, in bold black paint, she waited because they made her. The courthouse was packed again, and this time, the mood had changed. The media buzz was louder, the faces in the pews more defiant. Signs filled the sidewalks like tombstones, each one bearing Mariah's name or the name of another woman who had been silenced, ignored, or buried under policy. But Angela wasn't thinking about signs or cameras. She was watching Dr. Evan Whitaker take the stand. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and looked straight at the jury. No notes, no lawyer-fed rehearsals. I was Mariah Ellis's attending physician on the night of her death, he began. I want to be very clear. Medically, I knew she needed intervention, immediately. But I didn't act because I was afraid of being sued. Not by the patient's family, but by a stranger on the internet who could claim I violated Texas law. He paused. The room was dead silent. She had a fever, bleeding, a non-viable fetus. Every textbook, every training, every instinct told me to intervene. But the heartbeat was still there, and the hospital had made it clear. Don't act unless you confirm the absence of fetal cardiac activity. Angela watched the jury lean in, faces tacked. Whitaker continued, his voice steady but heavy. I was taught to save lives. SB 8 taught me to watch them slip away. The state attorney objected, calling the statement speculative. The judge overruled. The damage was already done. And then, in a move that no one expected, Whitaker did something bolder. I resigned from my position 3 weeks later, he said, and I brought copies of the internal memos issued by hospital legal counsel, emails that explicitly advised us to avoid intervention unless we could confirm the absence of fetal cardiac activity. He handed them over. Keisha Dunn, sitting in the back row with her recorder off for once, whispered, "Holy shit." The judge allowed the documents into evidence. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Mariah. It was about a systemic cover-up. Angela felt a crack open inside her. Not pain this time, but rage. Cold, clean rage. The trial dragged on. Experts were called in. Doctors, ethicists, even a pastor who tried to argue that suffering is part of motherhood. Angela walked out during his testimony. The turning point came when another mother testified. Her daughter had nearly died under similar circumstances, but had survived because they were able to reach a clinic across state lines. We drove 12 hours through the night because I couldn't let my child die for a law made by men who'd never bled a day.
By the end of the week, the jury looked worn and angry. The state's defense grew weaker, more desperate. They tried to argue that the law was never intended to cause harm, but it sounded hollow, like reading thoughts off a cue card. Angela gave no closing statement. Her lawyer spoke for her. But as the jury left the courtroom to deliberate, she turned toward the gallery, toward the cameras, the reporters, the watchers, and said only this: "I don't want money. I want a world where my daughter would still be alive." It took 3 days for the jury to return. Liability was established. The hospital was found negligent. The court acknowledged that SB 8 directly influenced the delay of treatment, creating an unreasonable and deadly hesitation in care. But the real bombshell came next. The judge called for a federal review of SB 8's application in hospitals across the state. It wasn't an overturn, not yet, but it was a start. Angela didn't smile at the verdict. She just closed her eyes, held Mariah's photo in her lap, and whispered, "We're not done, baby. Not yet." The verdict hit the airwaves like a thunderclap. For a moment, it felt like justice had cracked the surface, just enough to let in some light. But light attracts shadows. The morning after the decision, Angela woke to the sound of shattering glass. Someone had thrown a brick through her motel window. No note this time, no message scrawled in Sharpie, just a brick, and the silence that followed it. She didn't flinch. She swept up the glass, taped a trash bag over the hole, and went back to her coffee. Because Angela Ellis had already lost everything that mattered. They couldn't take her pain. They couldn't take Mariah. But they tried anyway. The attack started online first. Photos of Angela at protests were turned into memes by right-wing blogs. Deadbeat mom wants sympathy for killing baby. They dragged up court records from her past, a shoplifting charge when Mariah was 5, a restraining order she once filed against a violent ex. They even found her old Facebook posts and twisted them into weapons. Dr. Whitaker wasn't spared either. A pro-life watchdog group doxed his new address. Protesters camped outside his apartment, screaming that he had blood on his hands. He'd saved no one, they said. He was a coward who abandoned the unborn. One night, someone spray-painted "murderer" across his car. He didn't call the cops. He didn't bother. He just stared at the red letters and whispered, "No, I just watched her die." Keisha Dunn, meanwhile, received an anonymous email warning her to stay in her lane. Her editor offered her a sabbatical. She refused. "This is my lane, and I'm just getting started." The judge who presided over the case received death threats. He was placed under temporary protection. The state's attorney general issued a vague statement condemning radical activism and hinted at future legal action to preserve Texas law from activist judges. In the weeks that followed, 2 more women died in hospitals under eerily similar circumstances. Both denied early intervention due to heartbeat clauses. Their stories hit the news, but the public, already overwhelmed by controversy fatigue, barely reacted. Angela watched it all from a folding chair outside the burned remains of her trailer. She didn't rebuild. She didn't even try. She just kept showing up, to vigils, to marches, to courtrooms, to town halls. She had become a symbol, but symbols don't sleep. They don't break down in grocery store aisles. They don't scream into pillows or hold baby clothes in the dark. One night, alone in her car, she broke. She clutched Mariah's hoodie to her chest and sobbed so hard she thought her ribs would snap. "I'm sorry, baby. I wasn't strong enough for both of us." The next day, she wiped her face, put on that same hoodie, and drove to the Capitol steps where a growing crowd awaited her. Reporters asked if she felt vindicated. Angela looked into the cameras and said, "Winning a case doesn't bring her back, but it might save the next girl. That's all I have left to give." The mural downtown was defaced 2 days later. Someone splashed black paint across Mariah's eyes. The city painted it over within hours. Volunteers came the same night and restored it, brighter, bolder. This time, the words below her face were changed. She died waiting. We won't. A year passed. The headlines faded. The protests thinned. The country moved on, just like it always does. Another tragedy, another moment of reckoning, buried under new scandals, new politics, and newer grief. But Angela Ellis did not move on. She moved forward. After the verdict, she partnered with Keisha Dunn in a small coalition of healthcare workers and civil rights advocates to create the Mariah Project, a grassroots legal aid and medical education group aimed at documenting harm caused by abortion bans across the country. They weren't big,
They weren't funded by billionaires, but they were loud, persistent, ruthless in memory. And they told stories, real ones, the kind that lawmakers couldn't hide from, the kind that made people feel. Dr. Evan Whitaker joined them full-time. Not as a doctor. He'd surrendered his license. "I don't deserve it," he said. But as a trainer, a voice, a witness. He stood in lecture halls and medical panels telling new doctors what fear had made him do, and what it had cost a girl named Mariah. Angela became a speaker, a reluctant one. She didn't like stages or microphones, but when she stood before crowds of college students, nurses, or town hall boards, people listened. She never made it about politics. She made it about one girl, one room, one doctor too scared to act. By the second year, 4 states had begun re-examining their emergency care clauses. Laws that once prioritized fetal heartbeat above all else were amended, reworded, or challenged outright. Not repealed. Not yet. But cracks were showing. And every time a bill was blocked or revised, Angela would whisper to the sky, "That's one for you, baby." She never remarried, never left Texas. "Someone's got to stay and make them uncomfortable," she said. The mural of Mariah became a landmark. Flowers gathered at its base every month. Teen girls came from small towns just to take pictures beside it. Some whispered prayers, some left notes, some cried. One note simply read, "Because of you, I kept going." Angela folded that one into her wallet and carried it everywhere. But justice always comes with a cost. Her health began to slip. Stress piled on her bones. She started coughing blood, but didn't tell anyone until it was too late. Stage 4 lung cancer. The quiet kind. The kind that waits in shadows until it doesn't have to anymore. She didn't fight it. Not really. She said, "Mariah's waiting. And I've told her story enough." Her last words were not dramatic. They weren't designed for a speech or a quote. She was lying in a hospice bed, window open, the sound of kids laughing outside. She turned to Keisha, who sat beside her every day since the diagnosis, and whispered, "You write it down, okay? All of it. Don't let them clean it up." Keisha nodded through tears. Angela smiled faintly. She was just a girl. That's all she ever was. She died with the sun on her face. 3 years later, the Mariah Act passed in the U.S. Senate by 1 vote. It didn't restore national abortion access, but it did mandate emergency intervention standards in all 50 states, regardless of fetal heartbeat, if the pregnant patient's life was at risk. Mariah's name was read on the floor. So was Angela's. Dr. Whitaker stood in the gallery, eyes red, hands shaking. Keisha was there, notebook in her lap, recording every word. And outside the Capitol, the mural was repainted one final time. No flowers, no slogans. Just a girl with soft brown eyes. And a world that finally listened.
What do you think? Do you believe laws like SB 8 protect life, or do they endanger it? Does Angela's fight inspire you? Does Mariah's death make you angry? We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your emotions, or your own story in the comments below. Let's not let this conversation die in silence. Because the truth is, someone else is still waiting.